The Odell Beckham saga is officially over as he has agreed to a one-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens, and those contract details are kind of crazy. We're going to discuss those details and how this affects the Kansas City Chiefs moving forward. But before we do all of that, please be sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, as I'm going to keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chief related that you do not want to miss out on. And without further ado, let's have some fun. And just like that, Chiefs Kingdom, the Odell Beckham rumors to KC are officially over as he has signed a one-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, before we do go into the contract details, I kind of want to discuss his destination a little bit because it's been rumored that he wanted to go to a contender, and it was rumored with the Baltimore Ravens, also the New York Jets, and we're bringing it up on this channel because it's been mentioned plenty of times throughout this offseason and in prior years past the Kansas City Chiefs. It was actually highly and heavily rumored that it could be a pairing with him and DeAndre Hopkins. Now we got his destination for 2023 in the Baltimore Ravens. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised a little bit because he had a scheduled meeting with the New York Jets. Now, I know he met with the Baltimore Ravens and I know they offered him a contract, but you could tell he was kind of playing the field and he wanted to see what the New York Jets were going to offer. And also, Aaron Rodgers was heavily sodding Odell Beckham if he was going to go to the Jets, which Aaron Rodgers should be a New York Jets, but he had this wish list and Odell Beckham was on it. Now that we've fast forward to today, he has agreed to a 1 year worth $18 million deal contract. Yes, I said $18 million, which is ridiculous. Now I know when it says worth up to, those are incentives, but even as an incentive-based contract that he got $18 million, is absurd. Like, we were hearing that single digit numbers between 4 to 9. Maybe he would get lucky to get incentives up to 10. But the fact that he got 18 million worth up to incentives is crazy. And also just focusing on the destination he is now at with the Baltimore Ravens, it's like, you don't even know who your quarterback is going to be. Now, I know there's all this dilemma and drama going on with Lamar Jackson, but at the end of the day, a lot of us expect him to be back because that's just what we're all used to, and that's what it's second nature, is that Lamar Jackson is a Baltimore Raven. But the more this keeps stringing out, it's like, you may not know what Lamar Jackson is going to be next year. He may be traded. He may really stick to his guns and not want to be a Baltimore Raven. And there was also factors coming into this as well, that this deal eats the majority, if not everything, of the Baltimore Ravens cap space, and it puts them in the negative now. It actually puts them at negative $6 million. So the Ravens are going to have to find a way to create cap space, which does that mean a Lamar Jackson trade and then they try to trade up to get one of these young studs, or will they clear cap space in a different avenue? It's going to be very, very interesting to see what the Baltimore Ravens do in the next coming days to create that cap space, and if Odell Beckham Jr. becoming a Raven affects Lamar Jackson in any way to be like, okay, it entices me to come back, which I don't believe that could be the case whatsoever as well, because Lamar Jackson is fighting for bigger things. He's fighting for security. He's fighting for a long-term deal. And I don't believe Odell Beckham affects that, even on a one-year deal. So very interesting destination for Odell Beckham Jr. Very, very interesting price point from the Baltimore Ravens at worth up to $18 million. And now let's get into this contract, because now we do have the details and $15 million of that is guaranteed. What? 15 million? That is so rich. That actually makes him the richest wide receiver of this 2023 offseason. He got paid more than anyone else this wide receiver offseason. The Baltimore Ravens are really just paying for a name at this point. And that is crazy to see. And that lets you know Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs were never interested at that price point. Honestly, Brett Veach was the one who probably offered him $4 million, and he was like, hell no, we ain't going $4 million because I know someone is going to fold and get close to my price. And that happened to be the Baltimore Ravens. And kudos to Odell Beckham Jr. because you got your money. You got what you wanted. At the end of the day, you said, nah, I didn't want 20 million. And even last night, actually a couple nights ago, he came out saying, I didn't even want 15 million. Where are those sources at? Well, look at your contract. It looks like you got 15 million, and that has to be what you asked for because they got to that point. It seems like the Ravens are playing desperation right here because they needed a wide receiver number one. They needed to outbid the Jets, so that's why they did it before he had his meeting with the Jets on Monday, which better them than us. Overpay a dude like that. Yes, he was talented. Yes, you are paying for a name, but to lock in 15 million guaranteed, up to 18 million worth, on a dude who has torn his ACL, may not look the same, and is aging over 30, that is a bit risky. And that's where we're going to focus on the Kansas City Chiefs, because now that Odell Beckham Jr. has his destination, a lot of people are saying, specifically Chiefs Kingdom, is like, that opens up another, takes away Baltimore Ravens, and that basically hones in as the Kansas City Chiefs as a landing spot for DeAndre Hopkins. It's hopeful thinking, Chiefs Kingdom, at this point. I'm watching the way Brett Veach is moving, as should everyone else. And I just don't believe DeAndre Hopkins is going to be a Kansas City Chief. Definitely via trade. Now, if he's released, that's a different story. But I would be stunned if the Arizona Cardinals released DeAndre Hopkins because they really have no reason to, specifically before the draft. So we'll have to see how that all unfolds. But I just don't see the Chiefs doing that. They signed Richie James, which has no impact whatsoever, but these are the type of dudes they sign that bring wide receiver depth. They're going to do this through the draft, or they're going to do it after the draft too. They focus on guys in OTAs in training camp who gets released, and then that's when the Kansas City Chiefs offseason officially begins. We've seen it when they signed guys like Carlos Dunlap. They were in negotiation with James Bradbury last year. They love that June, July, August period when you get close to training camp and those players start getting released and they can just surprisingly add someone to the roster. It's not going to be a free agent right now. It's not going to be a via trade right now. They're going to do it via the draft and a name that is a potential release candidate. That's how Brett Veach moves. Brett Veach, he may have been interested in Odell Beckham Jr. But when you hear 15 million guaranteed and almost 20 million worth of incentives, yeah, you can miss me with that. But also, before we get into anything else and just kind of disregarding and moving on past the DeAndre Hopkins, this Odell Beckham Jr. has huge implications on, focusing on the draft, because the Baltimore Ravens have been heavily sought for a wide receiver. And who knows, does Odell Beckham change that? Or do they still focus on that in round one? Now, you're paying a pretty penny for Odell Beckham Jr. And that's like a wide receiver number one money. So you best believe they're going to focus on getting him the ball. But they can still add depth. But do they need that most in specific in round one? I don't know. That means that can help the wide receiver board shape up in your way, because the Baltimore Ravens have been having mock drafts projecting them with guys like Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers. If the Baltimore Ravens aren't focusing on a wide receiver in the first round anymore, that means they can slide closer and closer to Kansas City, which helps that draft board look more enticing for Brett Veach and the boys moving forward, which is a huge positive. And that means you don't have to force your hand whatsoever when it comes to a trade candidate like DeAndre Hopkins or paying a guy top dollar. You build this wide receiver room up through the draft. That's what Brett Veach does best. And I'm glad. I'm really glad he didn't hone in on Odell Beckham Jr. At the end of the day, we all knew he wasn't going to do that. We knew if Odell Beckham was going to ask a pretty penny, Brett Veach wasn't going to do that. And that's the same with DeAndre Hopkins too. He might extend a little more and offer more for DeAndre Hopkins, but is not going to be anything absurd. And also, like I mentioned previously, if the Kansas City Chiefs are going to make a move, the first move that is going to happen is they are going to extend Chris Jones. That's one of the ways, and honestly, the only way right now to create cap space in the moment. And also, solidify Chris Jones as a Kansas City Chief for life, which I want to comment on that because he took to Twitter and he said he's going to win an MVP. And man, pay that man. That's all I'm going to say. Every time he tweets something, he sees into the future, and it always happens. Where he said, we're going to be AFC champions. We're going to win the Super Bowl. Somehow, some way it happens. So I ain't betting against the man. I just think is a 20-sack season incoming. And if that is so, you need to pay him before he hits that point. Because once he does, if you think $25 million a year is rich, he gonna want that Aaron Donald money, and it's gonna be $30 million a year. So you might want to lock him down right now. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, and it shouldn't even be a question. Chris Jones deserves it. But also, like I mentioned, if the Kansas City Chiefs are gonna be in play for anybody, that's gonna be the main way for the Kansas City Chiefs to create cap space. So kind of stop hoping for moves to happen here and there, because they're not, until you see Chris Jones get extended. When that happens, the Chiefs got some money to play with. Until then, they don't, and you just focus on the draft and you watch Brett Veach do his magic. But with that, Chiefs Kingdom, I wanted to give you a short video, break this Odell Beckham Jr. news to the Baltimore Ravens, give it to you from a Kansas City Chiefs perspective. It's positive all around. They don't pay that type of money. Also, the Ravens may not be focused on a wide receiver one in round one. So that means if that draft board shapes perfectly, the Chiefs may get their guy. But whoever their guy may be, and may be best player available, best believe Brett Veach is going to get the great fit in the first round, and they will probably be key contributors day one. With that, Chiefs Kingdom, I am going to close this video out. Please make sure you do subscribe to the channel. If you did like this video, please give me that big thumbs up. Y'all take care. Peace.